Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome back to another video. And today is the second video in my TBR completion project. So I will link the first vlog up above and down below. Basically, the idea of this series is for me to react to my TBRs, starting from my first TBR this year. And whatever book I didn't read on that TBR, I will read in the second half of this video, which will be a vlog. And I will also be reading books from my top 20 books of 2020 to read, which is a TBR video I made at the very beginning of the year for the rest of the year that I have neglected this entire year. So I'm going to incorporate those books throughout the vlog, so I won't read all of them in this vlog, but I might read one or two. It depends on how many books are going to show up in the TBR video that I'm going to react to today. So I didn't do a February TBR, thank goodness, but I did do a March TBR, and I'm a little bit nervous just because I titled it an ambitious TBR to save me from my reading slump. So did I complete this ambitious TBR? I actually highly doubt it. So we're going to react now.
First set of reading plans I have for March is to catch up on the Shadowhunter Chronicles. So I have to read the short story collection. So there's the Bane Chronicles, the Shadow Market, and I own the Shadowhunter Academy.
Okay, I've read all three of them. Good job.
I'm going to read Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess. I started reading.
I never reread Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess. Damn it! Oh, this is weird because I've read these books, but it's been years, and I reread the first book in this series, Clockwork Angel, at the beginning of the year, and I originally was intending to reread these books because I wanted to read Chain of Gold, but I never read book 2 or book 3, but I did read Chain of Gold.
So talking of hyped new releases, of course we had Crescent City also get released in March.
I read Crescent City.
Then the last release I'm hoping to get to is The Midnight Lie.
I did also read The Midnight Lie.
Other books I'm hoping to get to. Emma.
Okay, I've read Emma. I didn't read it in March. I ended up reading it in July, but I did read it. And Emma's another book that's on my top 20 books of 2020 to read. So that's good. It's crossed off 2 TBR videos.
I will then be reading The Bitter Kingdom by Rick Hasson.
I read this. I had to read this. This is for a read-along that I did.
I'm then hoping to get to City of Stairs by Robert Jackson.
Okay, I haven't read this, but I was actually trying to think of like the top books I want to read before the end of the year because I will do a December TBR, and City of Stairs was actually on it, so this is really convenient.
Yeah, this I'll read, otherwise I'll read For Sure, which is the sequel to that.
Okay, I've read Sure 4.
And I need to continue on with The Diviners, and I still got to read Before the Devil Breaks You and King of Crows. So
Okay, yeah, I was expecting these two to pop up. Oh my god, so far we have 5 books.
The last book I'm hoping to get to in March is The Never Too Teen World of Strange.
Okay, I read this. I didn't read it in March. I read this, I want to say in June, July.
And then if I also get a chance, I have been slowly rereading Harry Potter up to book 6. So I'll read Half-Blood Prince and hopefully Deathly Hallows.
No. Okay, I know I said I was going to read every single book on my TBR, and I am planning on reading every single book, even if it's rereads, but Harry Potter, it's not going to happen. Like, I'm just too disgusted by everything J.K. Rowling has done and said. So I have the books that I need to read for this video. I don't own physical copies of The Diviners. I own the audiobooks, so I'll just be listening to them. I knew we started off way too smoothly. Like, finishing these 5 books in a week, I don't know how I'll do. So this will be interesting. It's Saturday right now, so I will come back to you tomorrow, which is Sunday, when I'm starting this vlog, and I'll decide then which book I want to start with. Hey guys, it is Monday. I was intending to update you yesterday, but I spent the entire day editing the first vlog in this series, and then today I went out for a walk, which was really nice because it was like a perfect spring day. And then I went to the bookstore, which was incredible because I haven't been to a bookstore for a very long time, and there I actually managed to find Pachinko, which is one of the books that is in my top 20 books of 2020 to read. So if I have time, and I would really like to as well, make a start in this week. I found it for $10. How incredible is that? My bookstore always has like really great deals, so of course I snatched this up. I also grabbed My Dark Vanessa again for $10, so we love some good bargains. Good news, I've already finished a book. I finished Before the Devil Breaks You. Before the Devil Breaks You is, if you do not know, the third book in the Diviners series. I do think this is the weakest book in the series, but we follow these teenagers, there's like a gang of them in 1920s New York who start to come together. So in the first book we kind of really meet a handful of them, and then we're introduced to more in the second book, and we've really got the group together by this third book. And each of these diviners have a set of abilities that is individual to them. I really love the characters and the gang dynamics. Oh my god, like together but also like individually, there's so many good dynamics. Like I love Ling and Henry. It's like the grumpy and the sunshine pairing, which is just fantastic. But I think with this book in particular, Before the Devil Breaks You, the reason I say it's the weakest is because I think there's like issues with plot structure. There's this point in the story where it feels like it's the climax, like you feel like you've reached the climax, there's so much build up to it, then it happens, but then there was literally like 10 hours of the audiobook left, and I'm just like, you should be done. I think if I read it physically I would have found the story to have really dragged, but because I listened to the audiobook it didn't like bother me as much as it would have. So I definitely recommend the audiobook if you're interested in this series. I just think it's like one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to, if not the best. It's just my favorite. And then I also think that what the previous two books did really well was this really good blend between having this overarching plot where there's like this main villain and a main storyline to do with the diviners, but then there's like all these individual subplots, I guess you would say, that follow the characters, and they're more like character plots. In here it was just like jam-packed with character plots. It felt like the author was trying to wrap up all these character plots and what was going on with these characters individually in order to tie them up, because next book's the last book, there's no time, it's got to like wrap up the story. And I think that's where this book kind of felt messy. The first two books had this really good blend between the character plot and the story plot, and in here it was just very jumbled. The other thing I will say is I absolutely hated Jericho's narrative and the direction that took. Like Jericho's story was the number one thing that I could remember from the first time I read the story, because I absolutely hated it, and literally everything else that happened in this book, like I just did not remember. I just remembered Jericho, and I hated it again, if not more this time. I just don't really understand why the author made the choice she did with Jericho, and like what the intent behind it was. If you have any thoughts on that, I'd be really interested to hear, because I just don't understand. I'm just kind of like, why? Other than that, I did really like this book. I'm giving it 3.5 stars, and I rounded it up to a 4 on Goodreads. Definitely like lacking in some areas, but the characters are just impeccable and they really do like hold up the story. The atmosphere of this as well is just so fantastic. Like it's kind of ghost, creepy, 1920s vibes. Oh, so good. Like I wish there were more like ghost books, especially like ghost books set in like period settings. Just my favorite thing. It was also actually so interesting reading this book during this time when we've just had the American election, because there's so much talk in here about the American dream and the true, great, ideal, whatever you want to call it, American. And I did make a start on King of Crows, the audiobook, but I'm not that far into it at all, but I'm hopeful that I will finish that quite quickly. Now, in terms of other books, I have a lot I need to get read this week. So if you watched the first vlog in this series, you would have seen that I started Children of Time and I got halfway through it, and I haven't read any more since that vlog. Then I have to read these two. So Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess. These will be rereads. I haven't read these since, I don't know, it's been years. I can't even tell you the last time I read these books, but I'm excited, I think, but also kind of apprehensive, just because when I was a teenager, these were my favorite books. Like Clockwork Princess for a while was my favorite book of all time. So I'm like a little bit apprehensive, you know, whenever you got to revisit an old fave and you know that you've grown and changed your taste a bit. I think it's going to be interesting. I do think I'm going to have a lot of nostalgia and still enjoy them somewhat, even though they might not be favorites anymore. Then the last book is is City of Stairs. And then I would love to make a start on Pachinko, but this is me being ambitious again. But you know, you gotta be somewhat ambitious to do well. I don't know where I was going with that, but in my head it made sense. So here are my reading plans for the week. That's a lot, isn't it? Plus King of Crows, the audiobook. We can do this. I'm feeling very optimistic considering I've already finished one book. So we're gonna keep that optimism and run with it. Also, I'm uploading the first vlog in this series tonight. I'm really happy with how it turned out, but I've wanted to do weekly vlogs for a while, but I just never really felt like my life is that interesting, and I don't really want to vlog my life. I want to just really stick to talking about the books, so I felt like I had to have a theme, but I didn't know what that was going to be, and now we got here. So I'm going to make the video live later tonight before I go to bed, so I'm really excited to see how people take it. I hope people like it and are excited about it as much as I am, because I think it's going to be really fun and interesting and probably challenging at some point. We shall see how that goes when we get there. Anyway, I'll be back later. It is Wednesday and I'm happy to say that I finished Children of Time. I really enjoyed this. This was such a solid read. I thought it was going to be such a serious story because I think that's just my perception of sci-fi, being very ignorant and new to the genre. But this was fun and funny. Basically, the story follows humans in the future where Earth is no longer livable and they've gone out in space to seek a new Earth. And they come across this planet called the Green Planet, but there are creatures there, huge intelligent spiders. So this is like a contact with aliens story, and we switch perspectives between the humans and the spiders. I thought it was so interesting because the way the spiders society works is it's a matriarchy and then the humans are a patriarchy, but there was definitely like reflections in the characters. Like I could definitely see the alpha characters reflecting one another, and then some of the side characters like the lone male in the spiders and like the one female from the humans and how they reflected one another. I thought was so interesting and well done. You know how some books just like make you think without like spoon feeding you the theme or concept or thought that the author is trying to deliver. I loved it. I did say in my last vlog that I did not think this was going to be a 5-star read, even though I was really enjoying it then as well, and I was right. This book I'm giving 4.25 stars. The reason I can't give it 5 stars is for me to give a book 5 stars, I have to absolutely fall in love with the characters and want to adopt them as my children. And although I really enjoyed the characters in here and I think they added a lot to the story, they were more characters trying to deliver a concept rather than characters that you would relate to or want to adopt as a child, which I really love and appreciate because I think it serves the story and I like the intent behind these characters and what the author was trying to do. I'm so happy to get that crossed off my top 20 books of 2020 to read. Now for the books I have to read for my March TBR, I am almost done with the audiobook of King of Crows, and I'm really sad to say that I don't think I'm liking it. I've sort of put off filming this because I was sort of waiting for like a moment to happen where it'd be like, oh, you know, I wasn't really in the story at the beginning or wasn't liking it as much as I've liked the other books in the series, but now I'm liking it. But I have about 6 hours of the audiobook left and I'm disappointed. I'm keeping this spoiler free, so it will be vague. There's all this stuff happening that I just don't think should be in a final book in a series. Libba Bray is introducing all these new characters so that our main characters can be paired off, basically. Like, we don't need every single character to be paired off with someone. Like, there were already enough couples and now there's a few new characters introduced. Well, actually there's a whole bunch of new characters introduced, but there's a few new characters introduced so that the characters who were part of the love triangle, the characters who didn't have a love interest, now have a love interest. And I'm just like, you don't need to do that for the final. And like the whole like main antagonist and that whole storyline which the entire series has been like heading towards mostly been put to the side, and we're having sort of other things happening. I get the sense that like Libba Bray loves these characters and I love them too, but it's like she wants to spend a lot of time with them just doing kind of like everyday stuff and how they live their life. We're doing that and diverting from what should be the main plot and the main direction. There's just so much build up to this antagonist and to his intentions, and we're just not getting that. I don't know, I was so disappointed. So I finished King of Crows the other night. It was so disappointing. I can't believe I've read another disappointing sequel. I keep reading books that are sequels to series I am loving, and they keep being major disappointments. So this just hit hard, really hard. I think my main issue with this book all came from the fact that the characters in this book traveled outside of New York. So if you haven't read this series and you don't know, the first 3 books in this series is entirely set in New York. And I think that having the story contained in New York was a really strong element of it. In this book, they travel outside of New York, and I think that interrupted the pacing of the book because the pacing was off. It was really, really off. We also met new characters while these characters traveled. I think that the traveling also diverted the plot. Also, a lot of the characters are separated from one another for a good portion of the book. And it was just not a good final book in the series, in my opinion. I'm giving this book 1.75 stars. I gave it 2 stars in Goodreads, but it's not, in my opinion, a 2-star read. It's a 1.75 stars, and that's only because of how much I love the characters. I think as well, I'm just so hugely disappointed because what the first 2 books did so fantastically was they had these brilliant, fleshed out and well-developed villains. So in book 1, we had a villain, and in book 2, we had a different villain, but the big villain, who was the final villain, was still there, but he was looming in the background. Because these first 2 villains were so well crafted, I was expecting like the final big boss villain to be like completely iconic and epic, and for this huge showdown to happen between the diviners and the villain. The potential I saw from book 1, you know, and the expectation of that potential was risen in book 2. And then in book 3, I said to you that I thought this book was the weakest book in the series. I take that back. I now think that King of Crows is the weakest book in the series. I did give Before the Devil Breaks You a bit of the benefit of the doubt, because you know how people always talk about like second books in the series sometimes suffer from second book syndrome. I also think that there's another syndrome for second last books in series. Like sometimes second last books in series really suffer because there has to be a lot of setup for the final book in order, you know, for things to happen. So the author's trying to get all this stuff done. So maybe it's like second last book in series setup syndrome. I don't know, that's probably too long of a title, but that's what we're going with. What I mean is stuff has to be done. Character plot lines need to be tied up, because a lot of the time the final book focuses on is the main storyline. And so because there was so much tying up of certain characters and certain plot lines in Before the Devil Breaks You, I was just expecting the entire focus of King of Crows to be about the villain and also us fully coming to understand the diviners' powers and where that came from and what it means to them. But we didn't really like get that, and it was just so disappointing because I think a lot of what we got was so unnecessary. This book didn't need to be as long as it was. I just expected so much, especially from this villain. Like, he was such a threat. From book 1, he was this looming figure in the background, and the first 2 books, they were scary. And those villains in those first 2 books, oh my god, did they just terrify you. And they were so well crafted. Like, I can't say that enough. And in this book, I didn't feel any fear or worry. Like, I just didn't feel the stakes. Oh, I'm so disappointed. Anyway, moving on. I completed Clockwork Prince, and I have made a start on Clockwork Princess, but I'm listening to the audiobook. I decided because it's Friday and I do want to try and finish filming this vlog by tomorrow, and I've got to finish this. I also need to finish City of Stairs. These are the mandatory reads, otherwise I've failed this week's challenge. But I've started this. I'm a good few chapters in. I think I'm about 100 pages in. I didn't mark it. And I started this book this morning when I woke up, and I'm 40 pages in. So let's talk about these first. If you're not familiar with the Shadowhunter world, Clockwork Prince is the second book in Cassandra Clare's second series. However, this is a prequel. So on the timeline of the Shadowhunters world, this series happens first, but was published halfway through the first series. This book we start from Tessa, who's from America, and she's come to London, and there she kind of gets thrust in the Shadowhunter world. I think something that this series does really well, especially for the time it was published and the way that the Shadowhunters was still kind of new when this was published. I really like how Cassandra Clare and he really expanded upon the world and the knowledge. Developing the world is just something I would personally really love to see in her later series. I think it's something that is sort of, for me, letting the series down from its potential. In this book, we learn a lot more in terms of the Shadowhunters and the Parabardi and the historical context of the lore of the Shadowhunters and why it is and the effects, which I really enjoyed. I also just adore Jem, Will, and Tessa. Like, honestly, they're like the iconic trio of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Tell me I'm wrong. Come on, tell me I'm wrong. They really are. I've definitely grown out of the Shadowhunters, and I knew that because one of my main issues with the Dark Artificers and Cassandra Clare's like later series is she focuses a lot on expanding characters and expanding family trees, but she doesn't expand the world or develop the world. And when it comes to fantasy books, if authors are expanding their series, like doing continued series, I do sort of expect them to develop the world somewhat, because I think it's really important. Like, I think where I have had not issues, but where I'm not liking Cassandra Clare's latest works is we have pretty much the same setup, and even early on as this book, you can see how similar her setups are. Like, this book, Tessa is someone who's grown up in the mundane or human world, and she comes into and is thrust into the Shadowhunter world. And in Cassandra Clare's first book, City of Bones, the same thing happens with Clary. And then even with City of Bones and Lady Midnight, the way the villains in those first two books, their structure and storyline is exactly the same, just for the first two books. I don't want to say exactly who, because spoilers. Yes, I know a lot of people say that like her characters feel the same and her stories feel the same, and I think it's set up. I think she needs to expand her world, develop her world, especially like different areas. I know she's done that a little bit, like she did it a little bit in the Dark Artificers with the fairies, but honestly not enough. I feel like what she did in the Dark Artificers with the fairies and everything we learned about the fairies in those books, I feel like we already knew. Like, I could have already assumed that without having been told because of like prior knowledge. Personally, that's where I find her books do a little bit of a disservice, is there's just so much focus on characters, which, I mean, I think that's why ultimately people love her books. I know when I was younger, that's why I loved her books. These characters were everything to me, but I'm the kind of reader now who really needs more. Like, I want to see different politics, I want to see different parts of the world, like more magic and how it works and other structures, whereas I just feel like we're getting a lot of the same. I didn't really need to go on that tangent. I did ultimately enjoy this, and I'm giving it 3.5 stars. It was originally a 5-star for me, but we're rating it 3.5 now. And most of that is for sentimental reasons anyway. Interested to see what I think of this, because I'm not far into it, and I'm just going to talk quickly about this one. I feel like I'm going to have a lot more to say later. This story had a lot of world building or world dumping on you in the first like chapter, or the prologue in the first chapter, which is something I've found that Robert Jackson Bennett does. So I feel like he can be very intimidating to read at first, just because of how much info dumping he dumps on you. So this story so far follows this agent who is sort of working as a spy, and she's come to the city, which is the city of stairs, to solve a murder. That's all I kind of really know so far. It was really interesting. She's come as this like cultural ambassador, like that's her disguise. She's got to solve this murder of someone who was sort of like a colleague to her. It seems to be Russian inspired, and also there used to be divinities in the world and they are no longer there. The divinities are a bit of a mystery at the moment, like they keep being mentioned in passing, but you're only getting little snippets, so you don't like fully know what the characters are referencing. They keep also referencing this war, like it seems like a pretty recent war, since these characters are still talking about the effects of the war. But when it comes to the divinities, they keep mentioning like the statues, but they've been like paved down, or like art and stuff, and how that's like not allowed. I really like the main character so far. Pretty hopeful that I will really enjoy this. I'm a little bit worried I won't finish this by tomorrow though, not going to lie. I'm only 40 pages in. So it's Saturday. I know I said I was going to originally finish the vlog today, but that's not going to happen because I haven't finished one of the books. So I did complete Clockwork Princess, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and I've made 182 pages of progress through this. So I've still got all of this to go, but oh, I've got my glasses on, sorry. Let me take them off. The glare is horrendous. What I was saying was I have started editing the vlog for this, and the only reason I wanted to complete the entirety of both these books today was so that I had all of tomorrow, which is Sunday, to edit the vlog. So since I've edited a large proportion of the vlog and I've edited the bits that I think are going to take me the longest, I'm hopeful that I can finish this. It's like 10:30 at night right now, so after I film this clip I will read more of this. But Clockwork Princess, I really didn't love this as much as I remembered. In my memory, this was my favorite book of the trilogy, but now present day me thinks the second book, Clockwork Prince, is my favorite. The plot in here just like was fine, like there was nothing wrong with it. It was just fine, I guess. There's just nothing really grabbed me. I forgot how much Cassandra Clare loves to like talk about memories. Like a lot of her characters are often remembering things or they're having dreams, and that's how she does a lot of her storytelling. And I know I loved it when I was younger, but it's not my favorite now. I would actually rather see things on the page that are actually happening in the plot and that are influencing the plot, not just dreams or memories that are trying to convey the characters' feelings or relationships or whatever. And I didn't also realize how quickly people were paired up in here. I remember loving who Cicely ended up with. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free, but in here it happened so quickly. Like it was basically instant love, which is fine, but it's just so weird how my memory like really kind of had it as like a slow burn romance, which it was not at all. I am actually really glad that I took the time this week to reread these two books, because I honestly don't know when else I would have gotten to them. It's difficult like to make time for rereads just in general, like even prior to booktube. I found that there's always so many books that you haven't gotten to yet that you want to, but now doing booktube it's even harder because I always have books that I need to read for videos and such, so many books especially rereads get pushed far back. So I am really happy that I took the time this week to reread these two books, even though they are no longer favorites of mine. It did make me feel 16 again, which was sweet. I decided my final rating for this book is going to be 3 stars. Okay, moving on to City of Stairs. I think while I talk about this, I'm just going to put on this face mask. I'm such a hoe for freebies, and I got this from Innisfree, so I want to try it out. It's their volcanic melting clay mask. Ooh. I mentioned before that it's info dumpy. Boy, is it info dumpy. Like one of the most info dumpy books I've read in a while. I would not recommend this to someone who is new to the adult fantasy genre, and I wouldn't recommend this to anyone who does not like or who struggles with political heavy fantasies, because this is super political heavy, which I love. We're immediately given like this huge history lesson on the world, but there's definitely like gaps in it, so you're not given all the information at once, but you are given an overload of information at once and then more. Essentially, it's set in this world that was once ruled by gods, and there's all these different gods who ruled these different, let's say, countries. It might be like states or cities, but I'm just gonna go countries for now. But these gods are no longer around. You don't really know why at the start, but you know that they're no longer in existence, and the one country or group of people that did not have a god who was ruling over them and were enslaved, they are now at the top of the hierarchy. They're the wealthiest country. They're also really involved in war. They keep mentioning war, and it's very evident that like wars happened, but I haven't really seen mention that war is currently happening, but I wouldn't be surprised that it is, because there's still very clearly a lot of conflict in this world. So this country, I think you pronounce this Sapori? I could be completely incorrect, but the main character that we're following, Shara, is from this country, and she, like I said, is pretending to be this ambassador that she is not. She's sort of secretly a spy, and she's trying to sort out what happened to this guy who was essentially her colleague. We are following her sort of going around meeting other political figures that the guy who was murdered, who he knew, so like she met his maid and stuff. What was really interesting was one of the political figures that she met was someone she had a past or relationship with when she was in university. Now there's hints of these revolutionaries rising up, and they think that maybe not all the gods were wiped out, that there might be one left, and that's a bad thing because the gods did oppress the people. I don't fully have an understanding or grasp on the world yet, but I'm super intrigued that I can't stop reading it. I want to know more. Like I want to have a deeper understanding, because like I went into this thinking that it was going to be like a high fantasy, sort of historical, but it's more urban fantasy. Like they talk about cars and things. I'm like, oh, car on the page. I'm like, wait, what? There's cars here? That just changed my whole image of the whole setting. So I finished it. It's Sunday afternoon, it's like 5 p.m, so it's getting late, and thank goodness I finished this on time, and I think I should be able to get the vlog up by tonight. I really enjoyed this book. I was editing the clips where I've already talked about this, and I've said most of what I've already wanted to say about this book, but I just want to add that I really love the characters. Robert Jackson Bennett writes characters really respectfully, especially in terms of women. I kind of hate that I have to single this out and say that I think he writes female characters well, because it's such a rarity in fantasy. So often they're objectified or they're not relevant. It shouldn't be a praise that I'm giving him because it should be normal, but this is the reality we're in. I love that he has multiple characters who are females who are in positions of power. He also doesn't objectify women. He also includes gay characters. Ultimately, though, this was a 4-star read for me. I couldn't rate it any higher because the world building is very, very clunky. I'm so glad that I got to pick this up and I finished it in time. It contained a lot of elements that I love to see in fantasy. It had gods, it had religion, it had lost histories. One thing I'll also add about the characters is they were all kind of older. They were all sort of in their 30s or 40s, which was really cool. That's all I'm going to add there. Before I wrap up this video, I just want to say a huge thank you because when I woke up this morning, I hit 2,000 subscribers and oh my goodness, I'm so grateful. You guys don't have to watch my videos, you don't have to subscribe, but you choose to, and that's just so cool that you do, and it just means a lot to me because I really love doing this, and it's just cool that people care. I'm going to do a Q&A soon. I think that might be my next video possibly because I've never done a Q&A. So if you could leave me any questions you would like me to answer, it can be book related, life related, any sort of question you want, please leave them down below because I would really love to answer as many as possible. And if you've made it this far, leave me a orange heart emoji to let me know that you've enjoyed this video. But thank you so much for watching, and I really hope that you're enjoying whatever you're currently reading, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!